So, you know how it is. You're curious. You want to really get your head around something complex, but without wading through tons of
Right.
research.
You want the core info fast.
Exactly. And today, that's what we're doing. You asked for a deep dive into female sexuality,
Mm.
and you pointed us towards Sex Bible for Women.
Hmm.
So our mission today is basically to pull out the key stuff from this guide. We want to challenge some of those, old ideas about women's desire, arousal, pleasure.
Yeah, there are quite a few myths floating around.
Think of this as your shortcut to a richer, more accurate picture.
And what's really striking about this source is how much it questions those long-held beliefs.
Yeah.
Directly, it suggests maybe our understanding's been a bit off. So we're here to distill that key info, give you, the listener, a kind of fresh take on everything from, bedroom stuff to bigger relationship dynamics.
Okay, let's jump right in. Let's tackle some of those really sticky myths first.
Good idea.
One that really jumped out at me was this idea that if a woman's in a relationship, especially a good one, masturbation is somehow, I don't know, not needed.
Or worse,
Yeah.
that it leads to some kind of vibrator addiction that ruins partner sex.
Right.
And the source just tackles that head on. It really debunks it.
How so?
Well, it basically says self-pleasure doesn't take away from enjoyment with a partner. The key thing for you, the listener, is that a woman's sexuality isn't just about partnered sex. Masturbation is vital for learning your own body, figuring out what feels good.
And then telling your partner, presumably.
Exactly. Communicating those desires more effectively.
Absolutely. Okay, then there's this other one, this idea that women can't, tell men what they want sexually because male egos are supposedly too fragile.
Yes.
The book even has this brilliant aside in parentheses, doesn't it? Something like,
Is it a wonder then that the monasteries aren't full?
yeah. It just perfectly highlights how absurd that sounds, right?
Totally. And for you listening, the takeaway is that this whole fragile male ego thing, stopping open talk, probably not the real issue.
So communication is key, basically.
Essential. The source really emphasizes that for, truly good sex, you need honest, open dialogue. Doesn't matter about gender. If someone actually cares about mutual pleasure, their ego should be able to handle that conversation.
Makes sense. And the last big myth for now, the female sexual peak. You know, the one that says it's all downhill after your 30s?
Oh, that old chestnut.
Yeah.
Yeah, the source really challenges that straight line view.
It's not just up then down.
It's much more nuanced. Different life phases can actually bring their own sexual perks.
Perks. Like what?
Well, here's where it gets interesting for you, the listener. The book suggests some women might even find their desire increases during perimenopause.
Really? What?
Hormonal shifts. Specifically, as estrogen drops, testosterone can become relatively more dominant. So the whole sexual landscape for women is way more varied than that simple curve suggests.
That's such an important point. Challenges that whole timeline we hear about. Okay, speaking of things being dynamic, let's get into how women actually experience desire and arousal. The book makes it clear it's often pretty different from the male model we usually hear about.
Precisely. The source points out, for men, desire often equals erection. It's, direct, visually obvious often.
Yeah, hard to miss sometimes.
Right. But for women, desire and arousal, less directly linked sometimes, and definitely less outwardly obvious. Female arousal, as the source explains it for you, the listener, it can be more multifaceted. It might not always immediately mean I want intercourse right now.
Right. Male arousal is just obvious. You see it, you feel it, and it often creates desire. But for women, arousal can be sparked by loads of different things, and it might not feel like that instant urge for sex.
And this leads to a really crucial difference for you listening.
Yeah.
Spontaneous versus receptive desire.
Okay, break that down.
Spontaneous desire is that sudden feeling,
Yeah.
actively wanting sex out of the blue. But the source stresses that receptive desire is just as valid.
Receptive, meaning...
Meaning desire that wakes up in response to stimulation.
Yeah.
Like kissing, touching, intimacy starting.
Ah, so it builds.
Exactly. And understanding this can be super empowering. It lets you recognize your own responses, take more control, even if that initial, spontaneous spark isn't always there.
That makes so much sense. Takes the pressure off, doesn't it? Feeling like you always have to be the one to start things or feel that big urge instantly. Knowing desire can build, and that's okay.
Oh,
That's a game changer for your understanding, listener.
totally.
Now, let's switch gears a bit. This section on partner numbers was fascinating. The book mentions research about reported numbers of sexual partners, men versus women. And at first glance, it seems to back up the stereotype, right? Men having way more.
Yes, surveys, like one from the National Center for Health Statistics, they have shown men reporting a higher median number of partners than women.
Yeah.
And yeah, people often take that as proof of, greater male promiscuity.
But then, the book introduces this mathematical argument from David Gale. Can you unpack his point and what it might mean for you, the listener?
It's brilliant, really. Gale's argument is purely logical. He basically says, look, in a heterosexual population, every time sex happens, it involves one man and one woman, right?
Right.
So the total number of partnerships has to be roughly equal between men and women overall. Therefore, the average number of partners across everyone should be pretty similar.
So if the surveys show a big difference.
His point is that the surveys likely show reporting bias.
Mm.
Maybe men exaggerating, women understating. Whatever the reason, it reinforces stereotypes for everyone involved.
Oh, wow. So the surveys might tell us more about social pressure and what we feel we should say, rather than actual behavior. And the book links this potential dishonesty about numbers to something else relevant for you, the listener.
Exactly. The source kind of poses the question. If we're maybe not totally upfront about something seemingly factual like partner numbers, what does that say about our honesty, even with ourselves, about more subjective things, like arousal, like desire?
Like a desire denial.
Yeah, hinted at that, maybe stemming from those same social pressures and feelings we've internalized.
It's all connected, isn't it? These messages really shape how we see ourselves and even report our own experiences. Okay, this leads us nicely to what the book calls the new science of desire and Nan Wise's desire curve. Sounds like a more up-to-date way for you, listener, to think about this stuff.
It is. Nan Wise's model is more dynamic. It moves past that older linear idea of sexual response. A key concept here, and this is important for you to grasp, listener, is the desire set point.
Desire set point, what's that?
It's basically a woman's baseline level of sexual craving.
Okay.
How much sex she desires for its own sake, regardless of relationship status. And the source says this set point is influenced by hormones, yes, but also genetics. And crucially, it can change quite a bit throughout a woman's life.
So it's not fixed, it fluctuates. And the book mentions a difference between men and women's set points over their lives, too.
Yeah, it's fluid. And the book does suggest a potential difference. Maybe men's desire peaks earlier, easier to trigger when young, while women's desire might deepen, become more intense later, maybe midlife and beyond. It uses examples like, high teenage male libido versus potentially great sex for older women.
Right.
The hormonal roller coaster women experience makes their desire curve less predictable than the more gradual testosterone decline in men. That's a key point for your understanding of your own journey, listener.
Okay, so the desire set point is the baseline, but the curve goes up from there. That's where this new relationship euphoria and REU comes in, the honeymoon phase.
Absolutely. And REU, described as a chemical high, basically, that intense infatuation state. It can last, 18 months to maybe 3 years in a new relationship.
Wow, that long.
Can be. And the source details the brain chemistry, PEA, norepinephrine, dopamine, oxytocin, they all surge, creates intense attraction, excitement, bonding. It's crucial for you to know, listener, that this initial high often gets mistaken for deep, lasting love.
So that crazy desire right at the start, it's not necessarily real love, it's more biology doing its thing inside you, listener.
Precisely. The book argues that what feels like intense desire early on is largely NRU fuel. It's great while it lasts, sure, but it's important for you to see it as a temporary chemical thing, not necessarily proof of long-term compatibility or what desire looks like in a committed relationship down the line.
Okay.
Real love, the source suggests, that grows over time, shared values, common future,
Yeah.
after the initial buzz wears off.
That's a really important difference for you to remember, listener. And does NREU hit women and men differently? Initially, at least.
Yeah, the book notes women might feel NREU effects more intensely at first, a bit like how alcohol might affect them quicker physiologically.
Yeah.
But it also points out that older women, with their changing hormones, might actually feel less intensely attached during NREU, maybe less swayed by oxytocin's power. But the main message for everyone, listener, is nobody's totally immune to it.
And if you, listener, wanted to maybe stretch out that honeymoon feeling a bit, the book actually offers some tips.
It does. Some perhaps surprising ones, like don't get too tangled up too fast, keep your own identity, your interests, bring your passions into the relationship.
So don't just merge into one blob immediately.
Basically, yeah. Avoid settling into that comfy routine too quickly. That can sometimes kill the initial spark.
Keep a bit of mystery, maintain your own self. Got it. Okay, we've talked about the initial rush, but what about other things influencing female libido beyond hormones? Because the book covers that too, which is important for your overall picture, listener.
Definitely. Hormones play a role, sure,
Right.
but the source highlights research showing other factors are critical. There was a study on women who'd had cancer treatment. Even when testosterone cream boosted their hormone levels, it didn't automatically boost desire. For these women, things like body image, mental health, the quality of their relationship, those were much bigger factors in whether the hormone therapy actually impacted their libido.
That really drives home for you, listener, that sexuality is so much more than just biology. It's tied up with our emotional state, our psychology. Okay, let's tackle another common idea. Women are just naturally slower to get aroused than men.
Right. The source challenges that directly. It actually says research shows women can get aroused just as quickly as men.
Really? So why the perception?
It often comes down to social expectations. Historically, women's lust has been kind of suppressed or made less visible, right? So their arousal seems less obvious or isn't acknowledged in the same way. This is a crucial point for you to think about, listener. It reframes female responsiveness.
So not a biological speed limit, more about conditioning and perception. And the book really hammers home the role of the brain in all this for women.
Hugely significant role, yes. The brain is key. If you're mentally disconnected, stressed, anxious, just not in the zone that can shut down physical responses.
But it's not all in the head, right?
No. The book acknowledges that a partner's technique absolutely matters. It can definitely be unstimulating. So it's a mix. Mental and physical factors are both at play for you, listener.
A two-way street. Need the right headspace, but also the right touch. Speaking of touch, the book really gets into the diverse ways women experience arousal and orgasm. Seems like a much wider spectrum than we often hear about, which is great for your understanding, listener.
Absolutely. The source shares loads of different stimuli women find arousing, some expected things, kissing, stroking, oral sex, but also less direct stuff. There's even a quote from a woman saying a man spending money on her is a turn-on.
Okay, see. Very individual.
These examples really show how personal female arousal is for each of you listening.
It's so varied. And when it comes to orgasm, the book breaks it down into different types. That was really interesting for me and hopefully for you too, listener.
Yes, it describes several kinds. The well-known clitoral one, of course.
Yeah.
Vaginal orgasm, less common on its own. Blended orgasms from multiple kinds of stimulation. Extragenital orgasms from stimulating other body parts. Even spontaneous or no-hands ones, just through thought or muscle clenching. It really shows the range of possibilities for you, listener.
And then it talks about bigger orgasms, extended, expanded, whole body. What are those differences for you, listener?
Okay, so extended orgasms mean more contractions, lasting longer, maybe longer pauses between them. Expanded means the feeling spreads out beyond just the genitals, pelvis, bum, upper thighs, maybe.
Right.
And whole body orgasms are described as the most intense, most spread out, felt through the entire body, like a complete takeover.
Wow, that paints quite a picture for you, listener. Okay. The book also mentions specific zones like the G-spot and the AFE zone. Quick overview of those and why they matter for you.
Sure. The G-spot is described as this textured area on the front wall of the vagina, maybe an inch or two in. Potential source of intense pleasure. The book gives tips on finding it. Opposite that is the AFE zone, anterior fornix erotic zone, small, sensitive patch near the cervix. Stroking that, the source says, often brings immediate lubrication.
And for boosting those orgasmic experiences, the book really pushes Kegel exercises. Something useful for you to look into, listener.
Definitely. Kegels strengthen the PC muscle pubococcygeus. The book presents them as essential for stronger, maybe more frequent orgasms, even multiple or extended ones.
It gives specific exercises too, right?
Yeah, short and long sequences and a push-out technique to develop the muscle further.
It really frames it as a basic skill for better sex, something you might find helps, listener. Now, the book isn't just about women, is it? It offers insights into male sexuality and boosting mutual pleasure, too.
That's right. It gives tips on stimulating men, highlighting the perineum, the importance of good oral and manual stimulation, and crucially, not forgetting the testicles.
Good point.
And also how to spot the signs he's getting close to ejaculating. It even has that playful suggestion about making him feel like he was asleep until you showed up, maybe a little ego boost.
A fun tip may be worth remembering. And it also talks about involving the partner during the woman's orgasm.
Yes, suggests things like nipple pinching or keeping eye contact while kissing during her orgasm to keep him really connected to the experience. Also guiding his hand to the G-spot during oral sex to get the right stimulation.
Okay, now this O-loop technique sounds Pretty wild a way for women to have no-hands orgasms during intercourse. Explain the basics for our listener.
Right, the O loop. It's presented as a mix of things. Cognitive feedback, visualization, a specific kind of tantric breathing, flexing the PC muscle, and focusing energy.
Energy focus.
Yeah, concentrating your awareness just below the chi center, and then consciously moving that focus down into the genitals with your breath. The idea is to maintain that focus and breathing to reach orgasm without direct manual stimulation during sex.
Sounds like it needs practice. The book mentions experiences vary.
Exactly. There's a learning curve. It notes some women in their test group got it fairly quickly. Others needed more practice to do it without, consciously thinking through every step.
Makes sense. Okay, moving beyond the penis, the book points out other male erogenous zones women might not know about. Useful info for you, listener.
It does. Highlights the frenulum, the F place on the underside of the head, and the raphe, the R line down the middle of the scrotum. Both very sensitive.
Right.
It also reminds us G-spot stimulation in men isn't universally enjoyed. Experiences differ. And then lists other spots. Ears, neck, inner thighs, temples, eyelids, nipples, buttocks.
Good reminder that men have more buttons to push than just the main one. What about erotic massage? Any tips there?
Yeah, suggestions for both giving and receiving, covering different body parts, different types of touch, long strokes, gentle pinches, kneading, emphasizes mutual exploration and talking about it during the massage.
And I liked how it framed mutual masturbation, heated mutual manual exploration.
Yeah, presents it as a great way for couples to explore each other, relaxed, learn firsthand what feels good, and even teach a partner about extending orgasm by watching them directly.
Okay, let's touch on something sensitive. Women's relationship with their bodies. That complex love-hate thing the book mentions.
Yeah, highlights how common it is for women to be way more critical of their bodies than their partners are. Suggests women often compare themselves unhelpfully to media ideals. It also touches briefly on historical phallic worship and how those ideals might still echo today in celebrity culture, etc.
And it specifically mentions vagina anxiety. Seems very current.
Yes, discusses how beyond just cleanliness worries, women feel increasing pressure about how their vaginas look, often driven by perceived ideals, societal stuff that isn't necessarily realistic.
Just another area where unrealistic standards cause anxiety and affect how women feel sexually. Okay, the age-old questions. Penis size and hardness. What perspectives does the book offer?
Shares a range of female views on size. Many suggest average is often totally fine, preferable even. Technique and connection matter way more. Includes that anecdote about one woman finding a very large penis genuinely too much dick. But it does stress that erection hardness is really important for satisfying intercourse.
So connection and skill often beat size, but a good firm erection definitely matters. Moving to something intimate, kissing. The book gets quite detailed on the perfect stand-up kiss and French kissing.
Yeah, it really breaks down techniques for both. Addresses common complaints men and women have about kissing styles. For French kissing, it stresses delicate, mutual tongue play, not too aggressive, not too passive. For general kissing, relaxed, open mouths make it better.
Good reminder that even basics like kissing can be improved with a bit of thought and technique. And to build up anticipation, the book has some fun teaser and foreplay ideas that might interest you, listener.
Offers various playful ways. Non-lip kisses, suggestive lingerie, just talking about sex openly, flirtatiously. The aim is to keep erotic energy flowing, make foreplay part of the whole experience, not just a quick warm-up.
Okay, let's get into specifics. Cunnilingus and fellatio, the book gives pretty detailed guidance on doing them well, really breaking down techniques for pleasure.
It really does. For cunnilingus, specific techniques for the clit, the U-spot, the AFE zone, addresses why some women don't enjoy, often bad technique or self-consciousness.
Right.
For fellatio, step-by-step instructions, hand techniques, tongue moves, managing pace, even challenges the old negative stigma around oral sex.
All about giving people the knowledge and skills for enjoyable pleasure. And for intercourse itself, the book says it can still be enjoyable even if a woman mainly orgasms other ways.
Yes, acknowledges that while direct clit stimulation might be quicker for orgasm, intercourse fulfills deep primal needs, connection, intimacy for both partners. Then it describes advanced positions, female superior variations, missionary tweaks, designed to hit different zones, enhanced stimulation, and highlights adding manual clit stimulation during sex for blended orgasms.
Shifting gears slightly, the book also looks at sexual variations kink, SM, suggests these are becoming more common, more accepted.
Yeah, notes the rise of kink among everyday couples, women just as likely to initiate. Defines SM sadomasochism as consensual power exchange through agreed games, scenarios, Stresses, rules, and limits are absolutely crucial. Briefly describes bondage, erotic spanking, techniques, safety.
All about exploring desire and pleasure safely, consensually. Now, fantasy stuff happening in our heads. What role do they play according to the book?
Mentions research suggesting men's and women's fantasies are getting more similar. Women's fantasies becoming more graphic, assertive, shares diverse, anonymized examples of female fantasies, shows the range, the intensity. Also discusses fantasy lovers as common, often satisfying, meeting various emotional needs.
Really normalizes having that inner world and how it feeds our sexuality.
Hmm.
The book also tackles tricky partner dynamics and challenges rigid ideas of normal relationships.
Touches on trends like staying together but seeking sex elsewhere due to different desire levels. The rise of bisexuality among women, multiple partner dynamics, threesomes, swinging, polyamory, addresses virtual partners, online infidelity, the real emotional impact. Ultimately, it pushes listeners away from one single definition of sexually normal. Focus instead on what brings you pleasure in your relationships. Cautions against anxiety from comparing bodies, relationships, sexual numbers.
Sounds like the key is finding what works for you, your relationship, without getting bogged down by external judgment. And to make things work better, the book stresses developing basic sexual skills.
Absolutely. Emphasizes that like any activity, skills enhance enjoyment for everyone.
Yep.
Even offers direct advice for women wanting to drive a man wild. Have your own orgasms, give good oral sex, know, and play his body.
Simple but effective advice. Now, sexuality across a lifetime. The book really fights that idea of a strict peak then inevitable decline.
Totally debunks it. Emphasizes sexuality evolves. Different life stages offer unique experiences. Arousal, orgasm might change in the 30s, 40s, sure, but potential for heightened desire before menopause, renewed interest after. Addresses pregnancy, breastfeeding impact, midlife physiological changes, reduced blood flow, hormones, and the importance of lube. Regular sex for vaginal health. Highlights midlife often brings more sexual confidence, and many older people have active, fulfilling sex lives.
So, not decline, but transformation and adaptation. The overall message seems to be forget normal, prioritize your own pleasure.
Exactly. The book repeats. Lack of good info, clinging to false ideas of normal, these block pleasure. Encourages listeners to figure out what disconnects them from their own body, their partner's body. Focus on individual desire response.
Which really highlights how vital good sex education is. The book notes deficiencies there, even in doctor training.
It does. Points out inadequate sex ed in the U.S., doctors often not trained enough to address sexual health well. Encourages listeners. Be proactive, find reliable info, push for better sex ed for everyone.
And for extra ways to enhance things, the book covers sex toys and erotic media too.
Discusses how toys have evolved, more focus on female pleasure now. Gives examples, different vibrators, dildos, suggestions for using them solo or with partners. Addresses why erotic DVDs videos appeal, fueling fantasy, improving technique, empowering exploration, while also noting problematic aspects of some porn, and pointing to examples of top porn films women buy, with maybe better representations.
Exploring all the tools available. Finally, the book wraps up by stressing sex is ultimately private, personal. Shares examples of common secrets within relationships.
Yes, underscores how personal sex is. Shares anonymized examples, affairs, undisclosed pasts, faked orgasms, different secret preferences, just to normalize the complexity, the hidden sides of sexual relationships.
So after this really deep dive into Sex Bible for Women, it's clear, isn't it? Female sexuality is way more intricate, diverse, fascinating than maybe we've been led to believe.
Definitely. It's about challenging myths, understanding our own responses better.
And prioritizing personal pleasure over those restrictive, often wrong ideas of normal.
Yeah, the strongest message is really about self-awareness, honest communication with partners, and being willing to explore beyond society's limits.
That's absolutely right. So perhaps true sexual empowerment for you, listener, isn't about conforming to some external normal at all. Maybe it's about embracing the beautiful complexity, the individuality of your own desires, responses, boundaries.
And fostering that open, honest talk with partners.
Exactly. We really encourage you to mull over what we've discussed today. Maybe even dig deeper into some of these ideas yourself.